Hey guys, Level Cap here, and today we're going to take a look at Day of Infamy, the spiritual successor to Day of Defeat, or one of the many spiritual successors to Day of Defeat, as there's a lot of indie developers making World War II games now. This game comes from the guys who made Insurgency, and in many ways you could think of this as sort of a World War II reskin of Insurgency. And if you're a big fan of Insurgency, then that's great news, especially if you like the World War II theater of war. And like Insurgency, this game also runs on the Source engine, which gives the developer some headroom to do some cool visual effects like this picture-in-picture rendering of scopes. Notice how the view inside the optic is magnified while my view outside the optic is not magnified. This is not an easy thing to do when it comes to game performance, and it's why you don't see this effect in a lot of video games that are really pushing the graphics boundaries, because they don't have the kind of headroom. But because we're using the Source engine here, we can have these cool kinds of rendering effects. And this is something that I really liked about Insurgency, and it's nice to see it carry over into a World War II game as well. Now, if you've played Insurgency, this game will feel right at home. It's got a fairly realistic damage model, one-shot kill with a lot of the rifles, a few shots with any of the smaller caliber weapons, but it's not really going to take much to down your opponent. A very realistic damage model, but also a very inviting game in the sense that there's not a whole lot of keys to try and memorize. It reminds you of a traditional shooter in many ways. You don't have to learn an ARMA style keyboard layout in order to play the game properly. Now, the setting might seem pretty familiar. This is D-Day, Omaha Beach. The map is actually called Dog Red, which was a section of the assault on D-Day. Basically, they just broke it up into sectors, and this was one sector of the beach with the big pillboxes. We got 3 pillboxes across the beach, and we're playing the attack and defend game mode, where the attackers have a limited number of waves, and as we capture objectives and push further and further up the beach, we get more and more waves until hopefully we capture the last objective. Now, the game is also oriented around teamwork. Aside from just twitch reflex and aiming skills, there's 9 different classes to pick from, all of which can kill just fine, but they also have various different roles on the battlefield. You've got officers that need to work together with radio men to call in airstrikes, and you'll see some of that. Aside from explosive airstrikes, you can also call in smoke airstrikes and other things like that to help your team push up the battlefield. And here we are at the start of a round. The maps are actually visually quite nice looking. Despite it being on a very old engine, I feel like the devs have really pushed it very far. The skyboxes look great. Some of the maps are a little less impressive visually speaking, but some of them you kind of gotta stand still for a moment and really notice the artistic beauty and detail that's been put into the maps. Again, the biggest limiting factor on this game is probably the fact that it is on the Source engine, though this is a very tried and true engine, tested for many years. Counter-Strike runs on this engine, so this is an engine that a lot of first-person shooter fans at least respect. We're not going to see any graphical fidelity that's going to blow people's minds, but at the same time, the devs are working on an Unreal version of Insurgency, and I imagine if that works out really well, we might be seeing maybe an Unreal version of this game at some point in the future as well. Now, the development history of Day of Infamy is pretty interesting. New World Interactive, the guys who made Insurgency, basically laid the groundwork for Day of Infamy with a couple of maps, character models, weapon models, sounds, animations, all that kind of stuff, and came out with it and said, look, here's the groundwork for creating a much bigger and cooler game. If the modding community wants to kind of come in, take over, and start making some maps and game modes for it, that would be great. And basically the community flocked to this. They liked it a lot. There was enough support behind it that the devs decided, hey, you know what? Let's just make a standalone retail version of this game. People are liking it that much that it's certainly worth the time and effort. So they went ahead and did that, and it came out just recently. Now, it was in early access or mod version for a while, so people have been able to sort of play this game and watch it develop for quite some time now, but only recently did it come out as full retail version for $20 on Steam, and I think it's absolutely worth every penny. The New World Interactive developers have certainly proven themselves. I love the fact that Insurgency was largely built with a remote team, people just working from different parts of the world together and collaborating their resources online. It's a really cool story. Now, I believe they do actually have a bigger studio where they do a lot of their new development on Sandstorm, but it's just a really cool story to hear about passionate modders coming together to make a mod that was so successful that it turned into a big game that sold so well that they're able to start making other games from that and update the game. And again, with Insurgency, all the DLC and content that's come out for that game post-release has all been 100% free. If people bought into the game or bought the base copy of the game, you've gotten everything that came out for that game on Steam, and it's really cool, and I imagine we'll be seeing a bunch of that with Day of Infamy as well. Now, generally speaking, you might not expect a $20 first-person shooter game on Steam to come with a progression system, but Day of Infamy actually does have the makings of a small little progression system. That it tracks your player stats, your rank and stuff like that. You get different emblems as you rank up, but you can also unlock different cosmetic items in the game, such as historical units, so you can change up the look of your soldier on the battlefield. They'll have different faces and different voice acting. There's also different weapon skins and different melee weapons that you can unlock. It's actually a decent little progression system. Something that I'm really happy that the devs went and did. This was actually one of my few critiques of Insurgency, was that it didn't launch with any sort of progression system, and that they had Steam Workshop skins and stuff you could apply to your character, but nothing that sort of solidified your cosmetic accomplishments within the game. And so the fact that they implemented this to Day of Infamy is really cool, and I'm excited because I think it means that they're going to incorporate this aspect into Insurgency Sandstorm as well. So progression systems are awesome, especially for a $20 game like this. I think it's really cool. I think New World Interactive has really sort of refined their game design, and it's exciting. Now, of course, there's also a flamethrower in the game, because why wouldn't you have a flamethrower in a World War II first-person shooter? Surprisingly, it's really good in close quarters. I mean, it toasts people instantly, despite the fact that most guns are one-shot kills or will kill you in like a few frames of seeing your enemy. The flamethrower still holds its own in close quarter combat, and it's really scary to go up against it. Alright, now despite me really liking this game and thinking it's absolutely worth the $20 purchase value, I do have some critiques, and some of them are a little bit more personal things that are like my pet peeves about games, but this is a game that relies mostly on map knowledge. Sure, twitch reflexes, accuracy, weapon skill, all that counts for something, but I would say this is like 80% map knowledge, 20% skill, because the time to kill is so fast, and the maps can be somewhat complicated when you first get into them. Lots of little murder holes and dark corners and stuff like that. It can be confusing and frustrating for a new player to get into, and you're realizing that you're getting ganked by people that know all the good gank spots, and you're just kind of walking into the meat grinder and over and over and over again. This can be really frustrating when playing on the assaulting side of a game, because you have to kind of run towards the enemy defenses and you don't really understand where they might be hiding or all the little nuances and crevices. So I'm not a huge fan of games that put such a big emphasis on map knowledge being the primary thing that you need to succeed in the game. And that just kind of comes with the territory of having a realistic damage model game. If your guns kill super fast and player movement isn't incredibly fast and map knowledge is kind of complicated, then it's going to be mostly about knowing the map and knowing where people hide versus your ability to compensate for recoil or your twitch reflex skills. It's just going to be, okay, do you know that guys hide in that room? Okay, grenade that room or flank that room. If you don't know that, you're going to get ganked every time. And this is something that it can easily be cured by playing the game more, but if you get frustrated right away, the introductory experience becomes more aggravating than fun. And that's just my personal opinion. So I think it's a game that can become more fun over time, but definitely more aggravating in the short term. If you're attracted to the idea of playing a World War II shooter with a realistic damage model and good close quarter combat, then that's probably not going to matter as much to you, as the ambiance, the theme, the setting is going to be enough of a draw to keep you glued to the game long enough to get really good at it, or at least to really learn the maps, which is basically, again, 80% of being good at this game is knowing all the nuances of the maps and where to hide and where to defend and where to attack. Now, my other critique of this game is something that I guess is not really that fair, but it's just that it's kind of dated. Again, we're seeing another Source Engine first-person shooter, which is fine. The game itself is good, but I think I've seen so many Source Engine shooters at this point. I've seen sort of the graphical similarities of them. I would love to see a more updated, more modern game. And it's a funny critique because New World Interactive is working on an Unreal version of Insurgency, which already sounds amazing to me. So I'm very excited about that. But at the same time, having a game come out now, 2017, again on the Source engine, being limited by the Source engine, and seeing kind of these more static, stale environments that aren't very interactive or destructive, or just the visual qualities being limited by the engine itself, is a little bit of a letdown. And certainly that comes from the fact that I play a lot of AAA games, a lot of full retail price expensive games, and comparing it to a $20 shooter isn't really fair. But again, seeing another Source engine game is something that doesn't excite me in the way that the average AAA shooter does. That being said, I still think Day of Infamy is a quality buy. It's a quality game, especially if you don't have a monster computer. This game is going to be awesome because it's going to run great on your system. It's very skill based, very map knowledge based, and it certainly puts you into the ambiance of being in a World War II setting. So if you like World War II shooters, if you like games that favor realism over sort of more arcadey style games, then this is something that could definitely appeal to you. It's available on Steam now. I highly recommend checking it out. As always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap signing out.